in News FNN News Network, and I am your host, Sibel. In recent news on the OLF, 6 senior OLF leaders currently imprisoned in a prison in Birayu were recently airlifted to the hospital after they engaged in a hunger strike in order to protest inhumane conditions of their imprisonment that lasted over 16 days. We'll put up the Ada Standard report on this, showing some of the leaders that had to be airlifted to the hospital because of their serious conditions after this hunger strike. Those includes Lami Benya, Michael Boran, Bate Orgesa, Kenasa Ayana, Dawit Abdata, and Gada Gabisa. Bate Orgesa, of course, the former PR former PR OLF bureau head. As their conditions seriously worsened in the near past, they were airlifted to a federal police hospital in Lideta, where they had to be resuscitated using intravenous fluids. And that is according to Diribi Demisi, who is the president of the Macha Tulama Association. He gave this information to the Addis Standard. And according to the current public relations head of the OLF, Lami Gemechu, the doctors who are treating the prisoners say that Kenasa Ayana is currently unconscious, while Michael Boran and Bate Orgesa are in critical conditions. And of course, these leaders' charges have been previously dropped by a court, but they are still being held in jail through government orders, essentially extrajudicially, and they have been denied visitation time with either family members or legal counsel since March 19th of this last year. And the OLF recently released a statement addressing the conditions of these leaders. We'll put that statement up here. So here an OLF statement released on February 10th, stating that those 30 OLF leaders and political prisoners are still detained at Sabeta police station without access to food, water, or medical care. And those prisoners include Mr. Dechasa Wirtu, journalist Bikila Amenu, and journalist Desu Dula. All of these other prisoners have also been denied food. Meanwhile, the head of the Sabata police station guard, who is Sergeant Dejene Kebede, is reported to have trashed the food that families and relatives have brought to the station for these prisoners, this according to the OLF statement. And in other news on Oromia, some terrorist militants, Amhara Fano terrorist militants, have reportedly killed 31 Oromo civilians in the Abedongoro district in the Horo Guduru Wallaga zone. Meanwhile, Prosperity Party forces are reported to have killed 2 children in the West Shawa zone of Oromia. Those victims include Muse Guta, who was 8 years old, and Ebisa Badhadha, who was 12 years old. They were killed in Fole Jaldu, which is in the West Shawa zone of Oromia, reportedly by Prosperity Party forces. And those forces apparently allegedly accused the parents of these children of supporting the OLA, and this is what led to the attack that ended in the tragic death of these 2 children. And in other news, in another recent press release from the OLF addresses a recent alleged massacre of civilians in the Gidame Woreda of Western Oromia. We'll put up that press release here. So the Ethiopian government alleged last week that the OLA was responsible for the deaths of 168 Amhara civilians in Gidami, 81 of whom were afterwards found in a mass grave. That allegation is according to the administrator of the Wallaga zone, Ibsabesha, and he also said that OLA troops were routed from the area after a counteroffensive by the Oromia Special Forces. However, and according to the Amhara Media Corporation's quote of a public relations officer of the Prosperity Party, Getachew Gabisa, the Kelem Wallaga in the eastern and western Wallagas had endured, quote, extensive damage after that attack. Additionally, Genocide Prevention in Ethiopia, an organization locally there, reported 60,000 Amharas are currently stranded in Kirumu in Wallaga without access to humanitarian aid. In this new press release, the OLF and OLA are claiming that their army was in no way involved with this murder and that there would be no political or military objective to target innocent civilians in the way that has been reported. And it reads here, quote, "For any close observer of the recent Ethiopian political life, it is easy to see that the Abiy regime has been using the Oromo Liberation Army as a scapegoat for any atrocity crimes that it commits against our people. Abiy kills the Oromo and blames the Oromo for their death." And as of today, February 14th, neither of these claims have been verified since accurate news reports from this area in Western Oromia have been very difficult to obtain. This is partially due to on and off continuous government shutdowns of internet and phone lines in the area as the government attempts to hobble the OLF and OLA. This OLF press release is now calling for an independent investigation in the massacre. So we hope that more information on this massacre will be available very soon. And in other news, the Oromo Human Rights and Relief Organization has recently released its annual report on human rights violations committed against the Oromo people by the government and other state actors in Ethiopia over the past year of 2021. We'll put up this report with an image here warning this is a graphic image. One case that drew the attention of OMRHO that is reported on in this report was the public execution of 17-year-old Emmanuel Wondimo Kebede by Oromia Special Forces in the Dembidolo town of Western Oromia that occurred on May 11th of last year. According to this report, the OSF actually filmed its murder of Emmanuel and also advertised his execution on the Facebook page of the city administration. That footage, which will not show, shows Emmanuel publicly humiliated and beaten by federal security forces, who also ordered nearby business owners and pedestrians to stop what they were doing and watch this very horrific event. And this event was further investigated by the BBC Afan Oromo, and the Kelem Walega's chief security officer was asked why Emmanuel was not brought to court and was denied justice, and he replied that, quote, "Emmanuel is not a suspect, but clearly an enemy, a member of Shani from the bush." Again, for newer listeners, Shani being a term that is used to describe the OLA by federal and government actors. And Emmanuel's case is just one in a number of the cases reported by the OMRHO that highlights this disturbing trend of extrajudicial killings that FNN has covered throughout Oromia going on for the past year. And moving on to its concluding statement here, the OMRHO calls for a cessation of hostility. We'll go to this closing statement at the bottom here. calling here for a cessation of hostility, for foreign troops to leave Ethiopia, for the opening of a national dialogue between Ethiopia's federal states, the right to self-determination for all independent nations, and also that the perpetrators of these genocidal acts be brought to justice. And that is all of our news for today. We'll continue to cover what goes on with this hunger strike from these OLF prisoners who have been repeatedly denied any kind of justice as they've been in prison without actually having active charges against them, as well as reports on Oromia and what is going on there. Again, thank you to our audience. This is FNN News, Finfine News Network, and I am your host, Sibel.